The bank teller looked at me the way people look at someone who doesn't understand the rules. Slowly, carefully, like she was choosing each word to avoid a scene. "Ma'am," she said, "this account was closed 6 weeks ago. I had been home for exactly 4 hours. My knee was still swollen from the surgery. My suitcase was still by the door. I hadn't even made coffee yet. I'd come straight to the bank because something about the house felt wrong the moment I stepped inside. And when something feels wrong after 72 years of trusting your instincts, you stop making coffee and you start asking questions." "Closed," I repeated. "By whom?" She glanced at her screen, then back at me. "By an authorized account holder acting under power of attorney." I didn't say anything. I just stood there in my good coat, the one I wore to church and to appointments that mattered. And I let the words settle into me the way cold settles into old bones. Slow, deep, permanent. My son had power of attorney. I'd signed it myself 6 weeks ago, the night before my knee replacement. He'd driven me to the surgeon's office, sat beside me while I signed the pre-op paperwork, and somewhere in the middle of it all, he'd slid another document across the table. "Just a precaution, Mom. In case something happens while you're under, you know how these things go." I knew how these things went now. I asked the teller how much had been in the account before it was closed. She hesitated. I told her I was the original account holder, that I had my ID and my social security card and a discharge document from the rehabilitation center dated that morning, and that I would wait as long as necessary. She told me. $44,218. Every cent my husband had left me when he passed 3 years ago. I thanked her and walked out into the February air and stood on the sidewalk for a long time. A pigeon pecked at something near the curb. A woman pushed a stroller past me without looking up. The world kept moving, indifferent. And I stood very still in the middle of it, trying to remember how to breathe. I had been gone 6 weeks. I had gone in for a knee replacement, a routine procedure, the kind they do 100 times a day in every city in the country. My surgeon had been calm and professional and had told me recovery would take 4 to 6 weeks at a rehabilitation facility before I could safely manage the stairs at home alone. I'd packed a bag, kissed my cat goodbye, and left the key with my son because he said he'd check on the house, water the plants, collect the mail. That's what family does. That's what I believed. The rehabilitation center was 40 minutes away, on the other side of the county. I had my phone, my books, my crossword puzzles. My son visited twice in 6 weeks. The first time, he brought flowers that wilted in 2 days. The second time, he didn't stay long. He said work was busy. He said his girlfriend, a woman I had met only 3 times, was helping him manage things. He said I looked tired. I said I was fine. We talked about the weather, and he left before dinner. I should have asked more questions. I know that now. On the drive home that morning, the rehabilitation center's van had dropped me at my front door, a small blue ranch house on Cleburne Street that I had lived in for 31 years. My husband had planted the dogwood tree in the front yard the spring we bought the place, and every year without fail it bloomed white in April, and I had never once considered that I might lose it. The house looked the same from the outside. The dogwood was bare and gray in February. The mailbox was empty. The welcome mat was where I'd left it. Inside was different. The kitchen was clean in a way my kitchen never was, the kind of clean that means someone has gone through drawers and not put things back quite right. The coffee mug my husband had brought home from a conference in 1987, the one I used every single morning, was gone. The shelf above the refrigerator where I kept my recipe binders had been straightened, and 2 of them were missing. Small things, the kind of things someone would take when they thought no one was coming back to notice. I stood in the middle of my kitchen with my suitcase at my feet, and I looked at the empty hook where that mug had hung, and I understood, suddenly and completely, that my son had not been checking on the house. He had been clearing it out. My neighbor Carol was in her driveway when I came back from the bank. She saw my face and came straight over without being asked. That's the thing about women who've known you for 20 years. They can read a face from 30 feet. "Ruth," she said. "You're home." "I'm home," I said. She looked at me carefully. "He was here a lot," she said slowly. "Your son, him and that woman. A few times with a truck. I thought you knew. I didn't know." She put her hand on my arm. "Come inside. I'll make tea." I sat at Carol's kitchen table and told her what I'd found. The empty bank account, the missing things, the kitchen that didn't smell like mine anymore. She listened without interrupting, which was what I needed. When I finished, she said, "You need a lawyer before you call him." I knew she was right. I had a name in my address book, an attorney named Patricia Mears, who had handled my husband's estate. She had been straightforward and steady during the worst weeks of my life, and I trusted her for that. I called her from Carol's kitchen, and she told me to come in the next morning and bring every document I had. That night, I slept in my own bed, which still smelled like mine. Whoever had been through the house had taken objects, not fabric. Small mercy. I lay on my back and stared at the ceiling and listened to the house settle around me, and I made a list in my mind of everything I needed to do. Banks, utilities, Social Security, the power of attorney, my son. I had raised him alone after his father left when he was 9 years old. I had worked double shifts at the hospital for years so he could have new shoes and summer camp and a used car when he turned 17. I had lent him money 6 separate times over the last decade, always when he asked, always without conditions, always because I thought that was what love looked like. He had a good job, or he said he did. He had a new girlfriend, the woman Carol had seen with the truck. I had met her at Thanksgiving, and she had spent the whole meal on her phone. My son had looked at her the way men sometimes look at women, who make them feel like they are finally someone important. I had thought at the time, "This one worries me." I had said nothing, because that is what mothers do when they love their children and don't want to be the thing standing between them and happiness. That silence cost me $44,000 and 6 weeks of someone else living in my house. Patricia's office was warm and smelled like paperback books. She sat across from me and read through everything I gave her. My original account statements, the copy of the power of attorney I'd retrieved from my home files, the discharge paperwork from the rehabilitation center, and she didn't speak until she'd read it all twice. "The power of attorney was for healthcare decisions," she said finally. I looked at her. "What do you mean?" She turned the document toward me and pointed. The form I had signed in the surgeon's office covered healthcare decisions only, specifically limited to medical care during my surgical recovery. It did not extend to financial accounts. It did not grant authority to access, transfer, or close any banking or investment accounts. Then how did the bank allow it? I asked. She set the paper down. That's what we're going to find out. What she found out over the next several days through formal written requests to the bank and a conversation with their fraud department was this. My son had presented a second document, a broader financial power of attorney, to the bank when he closed my account. A document I had never signed. A document with my name on it in handwriting that was close to mine but not mine, in ink that was slightly too dark, signed in front of a notary I had never met. He had forged it. I sat with that for a long time. Not the legal implications, though those were severe. The simple human fact of it. My son had forged my signature. He had sat somewhere his apartment, maybe, or the girlfriend's kitchen table, and written my name on a document and presented it to a bank as authentic. And then he had taken everything I had. I didn't cry. I had cried when my husband died. I had cried when my mother died. I had cried at the end of certain books and at the beginning of certain songs and twice on the drive home from that rehabilitation center because my knee hurt and I missed my mug and I didn't know yet how much worse it was going to get. But I did not cry about this. What I felt was quieter and colder and in some ways more final than grief. Patricia filed a fraud report with the bank and a police report with the county sheriff's office that same week. She also sent a certified letter to my son, informing him that the power of attorney, both the real one and the forged one, were formally revoked, and that all further contact regarding my finances or my property should go through her office. He called me that night. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to the message twice, standing in my kitchen with the light above the stove on because I hadn't gotten around to fixing the overhead fixture, and I didn't feel like asking him for help with anything anymore. He sounded nervous. He said there had been a misunderstanding. He said the girlfriend had handled most of it, and he wasn't fully aware of what she'd done with the account. He said Mom about 4 times, soft and familiar, the way he used to say it when he was small and had broken something and needed me not to be angry. I deleted the message. The next morning, I drove to the utilities office, the gas company, and the post office. My son had changed the billing address on my gas and electric accounts to his apartment. He had put in a mail forwarding request in my name, redirecting my mail to his address starting the first week I was in the rehabilitation center. My Social Security payments, my small pension check, a rebate from my insurance company, 6 weeks of correspondence that should have come to me had gone to him. The postal clerk who helped me was young and efficient and did not ask why I needed to reverse a forwarding request that I had apparently submitted myself. I did not offer an explanation. I simply provided my ID, my current address, my utility bills, and Patricia's contact information. And I asked for everything to be corrected in writing. "Is there anything else?" the clerk asked. "Not today," I said. At home, I found the shoebox in the back of my closet, where I kept the things I couldn't display but couldn't throw away. My husband's watch, the one he wore every day for 30 years. A birthday card my son had made me in 2nd grade, crayoned sunflowers on green construction paper. "Mom, you are the best in the whole world," spelled wrong with love. A small silver pin shaped like a hummingbird that my own mother had given me the day I graduated nursing school. I held each one in my palm for a moment, and then I put them back in the box, and I put the box in my car. Some things you keep somewhere they can't be taken. 2 weeks after I came home, I drove to my son's apartment. I had not called ahead. I went on a Saturday morning when I knew he would be there, because he had always slept late on weekends, and I knew his habits better than he realized. His girlfriend answered the door. She was in her 30s, polished even at 9 in the morning, and for a moment she simply looked at me without speaking, the way someone looks at a thing they expected to be gone. "Is my son home?" I asked. She stepped back and called his name. He came from the hallway in a t-shirt and jeans, and when he saw me, he stopped. He looked older than I remembered. Or maybe I was just seeing him more clearly. "Mom," he said. I walked past him into the apartment. I had not planned to, but I needed to see, and so I looked. The coffee table was new, heavy and dark, the kind that cost money. There was a television on the wall that hadn't been there at Christmas. In the corner of the living room, stacked against the wall, were 3 boxes I recognized. My china, the blue and white set my husband and I had received as a wedding gift. My mother's quilts, folded in the old pillowcase I used to store them in. My husband's military photograph, still in the frame I'd bought for it 20 years ago. I stopped in front of the photograph. "That," I said, was hanging in my hallway. My son said nothing. "You took it," I said. "You took it and brought it here and put it in a corner. We were going to display it," he said, and then stopped. Because he heard himself, his girlfriend had moved to the kitchen doorway. I turned to look at her. She met my eyes without blinking, and I understood then, completely, what she was. Not evil the way it looks in stories, not dramatic or theatrical, just a woman who had looked at my son and seen a man who would do anything to make her comfortable, and had made herself comfortable. "The bank fraud is documented," I said to her directly. "The forged signature, the account closure, the mail forwarding. The sheriff's office has everything. My attorney has filed with the DA." She said nothing. I turned back to my son. He looked like he might be sick. "I didn't know she forged it," he said. "I swear I thought you'd signed something. I didn't check." "You didn't check," I said, because checking would have meant asking, and asking would have meant telling me, and telling me would have meant giving it back. He looked at the floor. "I needed the money. You needed to ask me. That's all you needed to do. I have never once said no to you. Not once in your entire life." I paused. "You didn't ask because you weren't sure I'd say yes this time, and you wanted to be sure." He didn't deny it. I picked up the military photograph and tucked it under my arm. "My attorney will be in contact. Don't move the boxes." I was at the door when he said, "Are you going to press charges?" I looked at him over my shoulder. "I already have." I left without waiting for an answer. Patricia was matter-of-fact about the timeline. The DA's office was reviewing the forged document. The bank had completed its fraud investigation and confirmed the signature was not mine. A forensic document examiner had submitted a report. There would be charges. The process would take months. My son's girlfriend was the primary subject. My son was a secondary one, and whether he faced charges would depend on what the investigation determined about his knowledge and participation. "What do you want?" Patricia asked me, the same way she'd asked when my husband died. Not "what do you think is fair?" Not "what would you like to happen?" "What do you want?" The first time, in that grief-soaked office, I had wanted my husband back, and we both knew she couldn't give me that. This time, I had an answer. "I want the money restored," I said. "All of it. I want the forged document on the record. And I want my son to understand what he did, not to the bank, not to the law." She nodded. "The first two we can work toward. The third is up to him." The bank restored my account 4 weeks later, not all at once. The process was slow and involved an internal fraud resolution team in several forms. I signed in a small gray office with a manager who apologized too many times and not enough. But the money came back, $44,218, plus a small amount of interest that felt, under the circumstances, almost comic. They also offered me a new account number, a new card, and a new password system that they described as significantly more secure. I thanked them and did not say what I was thinking. What I was thinking was that security means nothing if you've already handed someone a key. I changed my will the following week. Patricia drafted it in a single afternoon, direct and clean. My estate, such as it was, would go to a nursing scholarship at the community college in my late husband's name. He had always said the nurses were the ones who really kept the world running. I had agreed. It felt right that his name would go on something that helped someone else, rather than on money that had nearly been taken to buy furniture for someone who didn't know what it cost. My son's name was not in the new will. I did not feel triumphant about that. I felt like someone who had put down something very heavy and was learning to stand straight again. That spring, a woman from the county's Adult Protective Services office called me. She had seen the police report and the bank fraud documentation and wanted to speak with me about a program they were developing for elder financial exploitation cases. She was soft-voiced and careful, the way social workers are trained to be. "Would you be willing to talk?" she said. "Not publicly, if you don't want. Just to help us understand what happened and how." I thought about it. Then I said yes. We met at a coffee shop near the library. She was younger than I expected and took careful notes and listened in the way that makes you feel your words are landing somewhere that matters. I told her about the surgery, the rehabilitation center, the key I'd given my son. I told her about the forged signature and the forwarded mail and the boxes of my mother's quilts stacked against someone else's wall. I told her about coming home to a house that smelled almost right but not quite. "Do you think you could have prevented it?" she asked. I considered the question seriously, because she deserved a serious answer. "I could have been more careful with the power of attorney," I said. "I could have asked a lawyer to review it before I signed. I could have set up account alerts. I could have called the bank from the rehabilitation center just to check." I wrapped both hands around my coffee cup. But I trusted my son. And trusting your child is not a mistake. Acting on that trust is not stupidity. What he did was a crime. The failure was his, not mine. She looked up from her notes. I hope you know that. I'm getting there, I said. The charges came through in the fall. My son's girlfriend was charged with felony fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. My son was charged with 1 count of misdemeanor fraud, specifically for the mail forwarding and account changes he had personally initiated and which could be traced to his device and his login. He had, according to the investigation, been aware of the account closure and had directed some of the spending, though the forged signature had been her doing. He called me when he got the charging papers. I answered this time. He cried. I had not heard him cry since he was a teenager, and it sounded different now, like something breaking that couldn't be put back together the same way. He said he was sorry. He said she had pushed him, told him I didn't need the money, that I was old and he'd inherit it anyway, that it wasn't really taking, just timing. He said he had told himself the same thing. He said he was ashamed of every part of it. I listened to all of it. Did you believe her? I asked. Or did you just want to? Silence. That's what I thought, I said. I'm going to make it right, he said. You're going to try, I said. There's a difference. Whether you get there is up to you. I told him not to contact me again until his case was resolved. He said he understood. I told him I still loved him because it was true and because I had decided not to perform the version of myself that didn't. But I told him love was not the same as forgetting, and I would not pretend otherwise. He said he knew. I hung up and sat at my kitchen table for a long time. The overhead light was fixed now. The mug hook was empty still, because I had bought a new mug. A plain white one I'd chosen myself from a shop downtown. The missing things were still missing. The quilts had been returned by court order, a little wrinkled but intact. The military photograph was back in the hallway where it belonged. The dogwood out front bloomed white that April, the same as it always had. I sat on the porch the morning it opened, with my coffee and my crossword, and I thought about what it means to start over when you're 72. People say it as though it's impossible, as though starting over belongs only to the young. But starting over is just deciding what you carry and what you leave behind. I had done it when my husband died. I was doing it now. What I carried. My own name. In my own accounts. Under no one's authority but mine. My mother's quilts. Folded now in the cedar chest in the bedroom. The hummingbird pin, which I had started wearing on Tuesdays for no reason other than that I wanted to. The memory of a boy who brought me crayoned sunflowers and misspelled his love and meant every letter of it. And the knowledge that somewhere inside the man he became, that boy still existed, even if he had made choices that were going to cost him. What I left behind. The idea that love protects you automatically. The belief that giving everything and asking nothing is a virtue. The habit of staying quiet when something felt wrong, because I didn't want to seem ungrateful or suspicious or difficult. I had been easy my whole life. Accommodating. The kind of woman who says it's fine and means it, and doesn't realize until too late that some people hear it's fine and understand it as permission. I was done being easy in that way. I was still kind. I was still warm. I still made lemon cake for Carol next door and went to the library on Thursday mornings and called my old nursing school friend in Oregon on the first Sunday of every month. I had not become hard, but I had become clear. There is a difference. And it took me 72 years and a 6-week absence and an empty bank account to fully understand it. The Adult Protective Services woman called to tell me our conversation had been included in a training document for financial institution employees. They were piloting a program to train bank tellers to recognize signs of elder financial exploitation, unusual account changes, third-party transactions, sudden closures. She said they were calling it an early warning initiative. We're thinking of including a real case study, she said. Not with names. Just the pattern. Would that be all right? I said yes. Thank you, she said. Honestly, cases like yours, where the person fights back and documents everything, they're the ones that actually change the system. I didn't respond right away. I looked out the window at the dogwood, past its bloom now, green and quiet in the May light. I didn't do it to change the system, I said finally. I did it because it was my life, and I was the only one who was going to fight for it, she said. She understood. I think she did. My son's case was resolved in October. His girlfriend received 2 years probation, mandatory financial counseling, and a restitution order for the full amount. My son received a fine and community service hours and a mark on his record that would follow him for 7 years. I did not attend either proceeding. Patricia went in my place and called me afterward, concise and accurate as always. It's done, she said. Thank you, I said. That night, I took the shoebox out of my car, where it had lived since February, and I brought it back inside. I put my husband's watch on the dresser, where I could see it in the morning. I set my mother's hummingbird pin in the small dish by the bathroom mirror. I left the birthday card in the box, because some things you keep even when they hurt, and because a child who misspells the word whole while trying to tell his mother she is the best of everything deserves to exist somewhere, even in a shoebox, even in the back of a closet. I stood in the hallway and looked at the military photograph for a long time. While I said to it, to him, to the quiet house around me, I'm still here. The house didn't answer. It didn't have to. I went to the kitchen and made coffee and sat at the table as the evening came on. And I thought, this is mine. This table, this cup, this light, this particular quiet that belongs to a woman who has fought for her own life and won it back and is, tonight, not waiting for anyone's permission to be at home in it. If you're still reading this, I want you to hear something. Not advice, not a lesson, just something I know to be true. Someone may tell you that love means you overlook things. That family means you give the benefit of the doubt past the point where doubt is reasonable. That being a good mother, a good grandmother, a good woman means you don't make trouble, don't ask hard questions, don't say out loud the thing that's been obvious for months. Don't believe them. Your kindness is not a contract. Your trust is not a liability. And your life, your accounts, your home, your name, the photograph on your wall and the quilt in your cedar chest and the coffee mug that belonged to someone you loved, your life is yours, completely, and anyone who treats it as something to be managed or moved or quietly cleared out while you are not looking has told you something important about themselves. Let them. And then let your attorney handle the rest. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who needs it. Leave a comment. Tell me what part hit hardest. And if you've been through something like this yourself, tell me that too, because you are not alone, and your story is worth saying out loud.